Hi, I'm Paola.
And I'm Danielle.
We wanted to welcome you to our podcast channel. As some of you may already know, we had a podcast before, but now we're starting it back up again after a little hiatus, and now we're on YouTube as well. And we're also going by a different name, as you might be able to see in the title. So the title of our podcast is now
Hysterrified.
Yeah, Hysterrified. So it's essentially the same thing. We're going to continue to do horror movie reviews because that's what we really like to do.
We still like scary stuff and we're still going to talk about it.
Yes, except now we'll do it here on YouTube, and we're hoping that everyone will join us back again because we have a good lineup coming up, and we hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, we're back, and we're better than ever. A few updates. We live in Maryland now, which is cool. We moved, which is part of the reason why we stopped working on the podcast to begin with. Aside other, life things. But we're very happy to be back and making podcasts again, / videos again. And yeah, we're ready to go. Today we're starting out with a banger, I think. Not really. I don't know. We'll see. We'll discuss. Danielle, which movie are we talking about today?
I'm glad you asked, Paola. So we're talking about Woman in the Window.
Ooh, spooky. Before we start, we of course want to let you know that there will be a lot of spoilers in this review. This is not a spoiler-free review. We will be discussing the plot of the movie. We literally have it all outlined, so if you haven't seen the movie The Woman in the Window yet, you might not want to watch this yet, but make sure to come back to it.
Okay, so The Woman in the Window is a 2021 American psychological thriller film. It is directed by Joe Wright from a screenplay by Tracy Letts. It's based on the 2018 novel of the same name by pseudonym author A.J. Finn.
Here is the plot synopsis from Wikipedia. Child psychologist Anna Fox lives alone in a Manhattan brownstone apartment after becoming separated from her husband Edward. He lives away with their daughter Olivia, but she talks to them on a daily basis. Anna suffers from agoraphobia, and her housebound state leads her to observe all her neighbors from a second-story window, including the Russell family, who recently moved in across the street. She also has a large number of medications and drinks alcohol daily. One evening, Jane Russell visits Anna and they befriend one another. She also meets Ethan, Jane's teenage son, who admits his father, Alistair, is abusive. One night, Anna witnesses Jane being stabbed to death in the living room. She contacts the police, but they do not believe her. Alistair arrives along with Jane, who to the shock of Anna, is a different woman to the one she met. She begins spying on the Russell family. Anna's tenant, David, lives in her basement and claims he did not hear or see anything, though she learns David was once in prison and broke his parole conditions. She receives an anonymous email with a photo of her sleeping. She contacts the detectives again, who are joined by the Russells and David, and has a nervous breakdown. It is revealed that Edward and Olivia are dead as a result of a car crash that Anna accidentally caused. She is now agoraphobic as a result, and her medication causes her to have hallucinations and conversations with people who are not really there. Anna apologizes to the Russell family and stops pursuing her suspicions. She records a video on her cell phone, planning to commit suicide by overdose. She then discovers a photograph she took of her cat, and in the reflection of the wine glass is the original Jane, proving she is real. Anna shows David the photo, and he confesses the original Jane she met is a woman named Katie Melly, Ethan's birth mother. Katie had been stalking the Russell family, trying to get close to Ethan, hence they had to move. David refuses to help Anna prove the truth when he is suddenly attacked and killed by Ethan, who had been lurking outside. Ethan reveals to Anna that he murdered Katie and is a budding serial killer, having also killed Alistair's secretary in Boston, and now intends to kill Anna. He had been letting himself into her apartment all week with a stolen key, and he was the one who took the photo of her sleeping. Anna flees to the roof where they fight until she pushes Ethan through the skylight to his death. As Anna recovers in the hospital, Detective Little states that they have arrested Alistair and Jane for helping Ethan cover up Katie's murder, and they have found Katie's body. Little admits he watched Anna's suicide video, but hands back her phone to allow her to delete it before she has to return it as evidence. He apologizes for not believing her. 9 months later, Anna, now sober, says her goodbyes to the apartment and to her late family before she moves out and on with her life, now no longer afraid of the outside world. So that was quite the synopsis, but that's basically the entire story. So let's get into it.
So Anne is the protagonist, who's played by Amy Adams. She's introduced as a suicidal, agoraphobic woman who is struggling after the death of her husband and daughter, who died in a car crash while she was driving. She's carrying an immense amount of guilt and can't forgive herself. As a result, for a majority of the film, she is in denial about her family's death until she has her little breakdown. But by the end of the movie, she's come to terms with her past and she's able to move on.
Yes, so Anna is going through it. She's having a hard time with things. And I think for me, seeing her as a character from the beginning, like being in like not very stable state of mind, already had me thinking of like there's got to be some sort of twist coming, because usually that's the case when like the main character is not a reliable, like not narrator, but you know what I mean, like they're not a reliable person as far as like carrying the narrative of the movie. So I was like, I feel like there's some that they're leaving out. I just kind of felt like there was a twist coming, which there were many twists, which we will get to later. So something that I will say about Anna that I was a little bit confused about as far as her character is that before any of the reveals regarding her family, because, as I read in the synopsis, one of the big reveals is a moment where we realize as the audience, when she's having a mental breakdown, that her family's actually dead. So before we realize that, it seems like in the beginning, she's trying to get better. Like she's going to therapy, she's having her medications adjusted, she's trying to get better so that she can be with her family. But like it seems like she's on her way to recovery. But there are also things about what she does that are contradictory to that. Like she drinks on her meds even though she knows that she's not supposed to. Like several characters in the movie pointed out to her like, hey, we're pretty sure you're not supposed to do that. And I don't know if that was put in there to reinforce her mental instability, or to me it kind of came off sometimes like, well, she must not really want to get better, like she must not really care about being reunited with her family. And so I feel like that was a little confusing to me as far as like her path to recovery. And there was also like, I don't know, I've seen other movies where, the main characters have, addiction issues and are in recovery for them or want to recover from them. And there's always somebody to like hold the person accountable and like kind of almost guide them through that path. But she doesn't really have that. Like her therapist seems pretty like degaff. Like he doesn't really care, like the few times that he is shown on screen, he's kind of like, I just always expected him to say something more, something like more supportive towards her, something more helpful, something recognizing the fact that she was not okay. So that was something that was weird to me from the beginning. But yeah, I think that if anything, it made me think that the exposition part of the storyline was just a little bit like clunky. Like it wasn't like clear to me uh, what it was that Anna wanted, and uh, basically, as far as her family goes, it was very unclear what she wanted, and the only time that I really knew what she wanted to achieve was when she was spying on the family, on the neighbors, because she was like trying to figure out what happened to the Jane lady, basically. But yeah. Um, so for the antagonist of the movie, I don't know about you, but I feel like there were a few at different points of the movie. There were like different antagonists.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
So the beginning, they're trying to they like frame different people as being the antagonist. And in the beginning, I think they're trying to frame it as Alistair from like the limited things that the audience slash Anne are given. And he is shitty.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna lie. But then it kind of seems like, at least in my I thought that David could have been. He seemed sus. He seemed
Yeah.
very sus.
That's true.
So, it seemed like it switched from being, or not necessarily switched. It seemed like it was just Alistair, and then it seemed like it was Alistair and David together.
Yeah.
And then, and then it turns out that it's actually Ethan. And there's also, I don't know if you would consider Anna's, like, mental instability or guilt as a protagonist, but I saw it, like, as a force.
Is an antagonist? Or
I get, well, not an antagonist, but it's another force working against her that's, like, complicating, like, adding conflict to what she's trying to accomplish. So I guess it's not an antagonist, but it is another force that's sort of working against her.
That's kind of what I thought too. I thought that was exactly also my thoughts. The movie, the way that the plot kind of moves, it is kind of written in a way that makes you go from like, no, he's the bad guy. No, actually, he's the bad guy. No, they're bad guys together, and then completely blindsides you at the end, which is interesting. I thought that as far as the conflict goes, and kind of what was driving the story forward, had a lot to do with Anna's kind of obsession with figuring out what had happened to Jane, or who she thought was Jane. And not only that, but also trying to figure out if Ethan was okay and if like his family was mistreating him and stuff like that, because that's definitely what appeared to be happening in the beginning.
Anna, I feel, was like extra driven because she was a child psychologist, so like that was her job, is to make sure that children are not being hurt and that they're okay. And she has suspicions against Alistair that Ethan is not okay. And also, I think that there's also that subconscious, because she's in denial at this point still, about like that she wasn't able to save her child. I mean, it wasn't like 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 a parent abusing them, but she just drove off the side of the cliff. So, but she didn't like save her daughter in a way, I guess. So I feel like she's trying to like make up for it by helping Ethan,
Mm-hmm.
And then also to like sort of prove that she's not crazy. Um, like how when they all cornered her kind of before she like breaks through and realizes that her family's dead. She was saying like, I see the way you guys are looking at me, and I'm not crazy. I know what I saw
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. So I feel like she's trying to like prove to herself that she's not like lost her marbles.
Yeah, yeah. That's true. I don't think I'd considered that, especially the fact that she's trying to help Ethan because her kid is dead, like, and that exists in her brain subconsciously throughout the entire movie, obviously, even though we don't become aware of it till like halfway through. So
Mm-hmm.
that's an interesting point. Um, yeah, there's definitely like a lot of moments in the movie where we see Anna like really trying to uh, take, I guess, like have a grasp on reality and just make sure that what she's seeing is what is happening, because I'm sure that even she doubts her own, you know, mental uh she doubts the reality around her because of her mental state, but at the same time she's determined to prove that it's not because of her mental state, which
Mm-hmm.
is why the whole scene where like everyone essentially gaslights her
Mm-hmm.
is really interesting, because it was kind of a clever thing to do as far as like making her think and making us as the audience think like, oh, look, she was wrong all along. And I was very curious at that point, like once they revealed that like that lady, what the other lady was Jane, and that Anna's family was dead. I was like, where is it gonna go now? Because they've already they've already revealed that it was all bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've just been invested in a
Bullshit.
story that was bullshit, essentially.
I wasn't buying it. I wasn't buying it. I mean, I was buying the part that she, that her family died.
Mm-hmm.
It made sense. Especially they kept on showing this like snowy transition between things. And I was like, what is up with this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is this? Are they going to tell us what this is? And then they did.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, they show us like her hallucination or her remembering, I guess, the car like upside down. And I was like, oh, well, that's shitty.
Mm-hmm.
And then she started apologizing. I was like, no, girl, don't apologize. You were right. You have the notebook that she drew in. Because I was like, I'm pretty sure she didn't draw it herself.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure she didn't.
I thought she just did. I took it face value. I was like, oh, well, she's not okay. So she was trying really hard to convince them,
Yeah.
So I did, I bought it. So then which made me even more confused about what was to come,
Mm-hmm.
And so once she kind of like goes through all that and they convince her that it wasn't true, I think, and she decides to like go through with committing suicide. I was just kind of like, okay, well, where is this going,
Mm-hmm.
And then of course there's like twists on turns on twists on turns.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like, I want to know what you thought about the whole thing with David. Like, he had Katie over, the quote unquote Jane, right? I feel like he could have said something, like she was so set on it. Obviously, she was so set on it being Jane, right? But at the same time, like, did it not occur to him that he might be talking about the lady that like he spent the night with? Like, I couldn't believe that like he didn't put that together.
I guess maybe what I was gonna say that maybe he didn't put it together because he didn't see Anne interact with Katie,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe he didn't. But no, because he said in the car that she kept talking about that Ethan was her son. And she kept. Maybe it's just the whole thing about that she was insisting that it was Jane that she talked to.
Yeah.
But I thought that was so slick when they like cut back to what Katie said in the moment when Anne said, "Oh, you're Jane," and she's like, "What made you think that?" And I was like, "Oh, oh!" And then you know what I wrote in my notes?
What?
There's a little saying that my mom says.
That's all right. The cat's eating. Just ignore her.
There's a little saying that my mom likes to say, and the saying is that assumptions are deadly. And
it's true.
Anna assumed that Katie was Jane, and if she had just asked her what was her name instead of assuming who she was, the whole movie would have been solved.
True. That's very true.
So my mom was right. Case closed.
Mom was right. Case closed. Caso cerrado. The other thing though about David, I'm sorry to harp on David, but I mean, come on. She said like once she was being confronted by like the police and the Russells and everything, she said like, yes, you know who that is. Her earrings are on your nightstand. Like how did in that moment, how come neither of them put it together? They were talking about the same person.
Yeah.
Because he didn't say like, oh, those earrings belong to this lady that came over the other day. Until later, until she was literally about to commit suicide.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he froze up because she's saying that...
She was accusing him?
Yeah, and also she's saying that lady was dead and that there was something in his room of hers. Maybe he didn't want the police
that's a good point.
Because they were literally right there and she was just saying about how you broke your parole, motherfucker.
Yeah.
So...
That's a good point. That's fair. You know what? Let's give David benefit of the doubt. I don't mean to drag him, but it just seemed weird to me, the whole execution of that.
There was a thing, now that you mention that you were focusing on David, that I just thought of. There's a total tone shift in the way that he's perceived from the beginning to the middle.
Absolutely.
And then, like, in the beginning, he's helpful. He's like, hey, you may, like, fix your light bulb? Hey, like, you need help with this? You need help with that?
Yep.
And then after he sleeps with Katie, it's like something changed in him. Like, he was, like, an asshole to her. Like, I mean, I understand that she went in his room and, like, he didn't like that. Like, her, like, invading his privacy.
He was, like, evil for no reason all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Like, it was understandable for him to be upset when she was in his room, like you said, and, like, saw his mail and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that he was portrayed was, like, you know, like, oh, no, like, this guy's bad all of a sudden.
Yeah.
He wasn't just, like, upset. He was, like, evil. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the lighting that they used.
Yeah.
And also, before that even, too, there was, like, a transition sort of between it, I guess, when she thought that someone broke into her house, which I think is when Ethan snuck into her house.
That's a good point.
That he was in there, and she heard that, but when she came downstairs, David just happened to be there.
Yeah.
So I think, at that point, it's like a jump scare that David is there, and you're like, oh, okay, it's just David.
Mm-hmm.
But then he goes up to check her little thing for the mold, and he jumps out, and the jump scare was, like, cut very awkwardly.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I don't remember that.
It looks like they just, like, I don't even know. They threw it in very, like, weird. Like, it looks like someone, like, cut out the chunk and then just, like, put it in there. It felt like the movie skipped or something.
Oh, the part when he, like,
jumped out from the shadows when he was, like, upstairs.
Yeah, when, like, he had literally just scared the shit out of her. And then he's like, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to scare her again.
Yeah, and it was a David jump scare. And I remember we both turned and looked at each other like
why the fuck? Why did that happen? Yeah.
So, I don't know. That was a little weird.
That was weird.
And then he was helpful at the end. Although he was being kind of like, all right, I'm leaving, lady. I'm not going with you
Right.
to police to tell them that this chick is I know who she is.
Yeah. It was weird. His whole... Also, like, I don't know. Up until the very end, I thought that he might still have something to do with Katie's death.
Because the whole storage moving boxes,
they
whatever, they're doing
they like
something.
planted too many seeds that later they said, like, fuck the seeds. You know what I mean? Like, they were like, that didn't matter. Which is, like, fine, I guess, but really annoying in the sense that there's no resolution. I feel like, you know, if we really want to get into what it was that I didn't like about this movie was that I feel like I watched one movie for almost like the entirety. I wouldn't even say half, like more than half. Up until the point when Ethan shows up, not only was there a tone shift in regards to like it going from like a psychological thriller, like in the beginning, it was very the setup and the way even like Amy Adams acting and the portrayal of her addiction and all the shots of her like laying on her couch like passed out drinking wine, watching TV. It was just the setup was very like psychological thriller, like this person's not okay, they're gonna get into some shit where their mind is playing tricks on them. And that's kind of what I expected, right? And then all of a sudden, literally towards like almost the end, it turns into like a straight up slasher almost. When it's revealed that Ethan's the bad guy, it's like it gave me like Scary Movie vibes. And like Scary Movie's great, don't get me wrong. Not Scary Movie, sorry. It gave me Scream vibes. Not Scary Movie. It gave me Scream vibes. And I think Scream is great. But it's also like funny. You know what I mean? Like it's also like a funny scary movie. And so when that happened, I was just kind of like, really? Like,
yeah.
This is where this is gonna go? Like, it was, and also just like, Amy Adams is great. And she's a great actress. And I think she really carried the movie like in the beginning and like she wasn't bad. She had a great performance. And I liked the kid that played Ethan when he was like being good. But as like a bad guy actor, I didn't think it was very good. He wasn't very convincing. It gave me that, I don't know if like you remember the end of Scream when it's revealed like who is the one that is like fucking with people, and I can't remember the mask guy face. I think he has a name. But there's like a little speech that they give, I'm pretty certain, about like, this is why we did this, and fucking this is why we did that. And it's like, it's so strange. Like his whole little speech about like, basically like, I'm an up and coming serial killer. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was just a little much. It was just a little much. It didn't seem like it belonged in this movie, in this story. It was just kind of like, huh, really? The fuck? That's where this is going?
Yeah, like when you're watching Scooby-Doo and this...
A classic, relatable.
Yeah, you're watching Scooby-Doo and like... This goofy motherfucker's head's popped out of the mask they pulled off, and you're like, get out of here!
It was absolutely a Scooby-Doo moment. It was just strange.
Yeah.
It kind of cheapened the movie for me. And it cheapened everything that was good about it for me. Because there were certainly things that I thought were good. I thought some of the cinematography was clever. There were some cool shots. There was a cool, like, little theme, or I don't know what you would call it, of, like, I think Danielle mentioned it earlier, of the snow. Like, the little scene of the snow, which I thought at first was, like, stars. Because I couldn't... You know, it doesn't really look like much until you're given the context of what it is. And I was wondering what that was about. And that was like a little bit of resolution in there. where it was like, oh, this is what it is. It's what she saw when her car was tumbling down after the car accident.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was clever. I was like, that's cool. Like it kind of came together for me in that moment. So I would honestly say up until that twist, that was one movie, and everything after that was like something else that I didn't really like. Is there something that you didn't like about the movie, or what do you think?
Oh, I just wanted to add on to your point that I feel like they had enough twists that one was it was you know that meme, the the Anthony Fantano pizza reaction meme to the cutting the pizza, and he's like, oh, okay, yeah.
I'll insert the clip now.
Ooh, a fresh pie? Save me a slice. That's good. Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's... Alright, that's good. Okay. Alright, okay, alright. Okay, that's good. That's good. It's enough slices!
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's cool. Like, that's good. Okay, that's enough. That's enough. That's enough!
Absolutely.
Yeah, like, that they were just doing it for a twist's sake, I feel like, at that point, and it could have totally been Alistair who popped out. It could have totally been Alistair.
And it would have made, like, it would have still been kind of dumb, but it would have made more sense.
Yeah.
It's just
or Alistair and David. David was coming to get the last of his shit.
Right.
He could just been like, yeah, it was Katie. And you know what? I put her in a box and I took her to wherever the fuck I drove away for a few days to.
Yeah.
And guess what? And then Alistair, like, pops out from, like, behind the door, and he, like, they have their little throwdown. But then, I mean, she would have had to fight, like, 2 dudes, which is, like...
Which she wouldn't have succeeded in.
Probably not.
Because somehow she still, like, got away, even though the guy, like, slashed her face or something.
Oh, yeah, you looked away at that part.
Yeah, I did
that
not
part
want to
was
see
really
that.
good. He took one of those little, like, gardening, like...
Rakes?
Little rakes, little gardening hand rake. He took it and he, like, into the side of her face, and you could see the little thing, like, sticking out on the inside of her mouth.
Oh, gross.
Which I think they did a really good job with that, whatever,
like the
CGI makeup, whatever it was.
It might have been a little bit of both.
I don't know. It looked really cool. And I was like, ouch, ouchie, ouch.
Ouchie,
ouch. Just one thing that I had that was a criticism is that, not a criticism, but I would have ranked the movie higher if it hadn't, like, been based upon 2 very, like I wanted more originality, maybe, to, like, to rank it higher. But it's very, like, common to, like, oh, this is a movie where there's a person and they are always snooping on their neighbor and they see them kill somebody. Like the Shia LaBeouf movie or whatever.
Yeah.
And other ones, like, it's a common thing now. And then also the like, oh, this person's on meds, so we can't trust them. And they can't trust themselves. Like, it's also kind of...
It's very tropey.
Yeah. But also, I feel like that the second of the 2, the people, like, gaslighting you and stuff, and not knowing what's fake or real, I feel like that would be a real fear for me if, like, it's a very, like, real thing that can happen and that I would be very afraid of happening to me.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I love psychological thrillers because of that. Because it's all like, there's no ghosts, there's no monsters. It's all stuff that is happening, in a person's brain. And so, like, that's why I thought it was, like, okay up until the reveal, where you realize that she killed her family, or that she accidentally, killed her family. I feel like even if the movie would have ended right there, it still might have been a little weak sauce, but at least it would have had a better resolution than what followed. Something else too that I think we might have talked in our previous episodes about is the idea of having a story or movie have that, like, neat bow at the end of, like, and now it's over. Like, you put a bow on it and it's done with.
Oh.
I absolutely despise when movies do that. And to me, a time a time jump, already a bad sign, already a little bit questionable. It can be done right, you know. But a time jump where she's literally just like, now I'm back in my apartment where everything happened, and wow, I'm gonna stand in this room and like, you know, be sentimental, and like it literally added absolutely nothing to the resolution. And so that kind of stuff bothers me, and it makes me like, I don't know. It was just another,
It didn't need to be there.
It just didn't need to be there. It was completely unnecessary. I think it was just like, I don't know why they did it, but they did it, and it was just kind of annoying to me. And it's one of those things that is such a like, it's such a cliche thing to do. I think it's done in horror movies a lot, but I feel like in recent years there are so much. I've seen so many movies that have like that have shown that there are so many other ways in which you can be creative and resolve your story without having to do that time jump, that scene that kind of ties it all together in a very neat bow. Because it's not necessary, you know. Like it's not. I feel like as an audience member, as a viewer, it makes me feel like they think like the filmmakers think I'm dumb, you know.
Yeah.
Like they need you to. It's almost like they need you to. They think you need to see like the end in order to understand that the story is over.
Yeah. I really liked how they throw you off the track of like what's going on multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were saying that you think it's Alistair, and then maybe no, it's David, maybe it's both of them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's neither of them. Maybe she just didn't know what she was seeing, but no, she did know what she was seeing. And then like, I mean, even having Ethan be the person, it was like a crazy twist. If they had done it better, maybe it would have been really good, but the way that it wasn't very good. But the twist itself could have been
better. I agree with that. I agree with that.
Because you didn't suspect him at all. At least I didn't suspect him at all. I didn't see it coming, which is cool. I kind of like when I don't see something coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think it might literally just been the way that it was executed in the movie. Mm-hmm. And then also this I think we mentioned it in the beginning, but it's based off a book, so I'm curious to see how it was executed in the book, because maybe it was one of those situations where they didn't quite
have enough time to flesh it out.
Yeah, or something, you know, like something was difficult to achieve, which makes me want to say that I read an article while I was doing research on like the plot and the details of the movie about how there's an article by the BBC that I will put in the description about how this movie was kind of cursed, quote unquote.
Oh, I like that.
Because the production had a lot of issues. Mm-hmm. There was like, I think that it was like a 20th Century Fox movie, and I might be botching this a little bit, so just look at the article if you want the straight facts. But it was made by 20th Century Fox, or a production company that was bought out by another production company in the middle of it being produced. And so then sometimes, and what the article said was that sometimes when that happens, the new production company that just bought out the old one isn't really interested in finishing a project that was already started before they were bought out. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, there were some reshoots, there were some controversies regarding the writer of the book, and one of the, I don't know if he was a producer or director of the movie, where you know, some unfavorable things about them were revealed, that, you know, I think the one guy had, it wasn't anything like super crazy, but it was like enough to give people pause. Like, I think the producer dude was like known for treating his like crew horribly, or like his assistant horribly, or something like that. So there were like hiccups point is there were hiccups. There were a lot of hiccups during the production of the movie, and basically there was a little while there where nobody wanted it, and it ended up with Netflix. And there was also the issue that when the movie was first shot, they did they let a test audience watch it, and they were confused. They were confused as hell, and they didn't like the movie. And so then they had to do a lot of like pickup shots and reshoots where they completely changed, I think, certain aspects of what they originally had in order to make the story clearer. So that, knowing that, I feel like gives you a lot of perspective into why some of the things that went wrong in this movie went wrong. Maybe it was better before, and maybe it wasn't so like because I think there was definitely the feeling for me where like I said, the movie as an audience member, as a viewer, it treats you a little bit like you have to be hand fed, this is what's happening. And so maybe it was different before. Well, obviously we'll never know, but I thought that was really interesting about like just the history of how the movie was made, and kind of like ups and downs that it had to go through production, because like I'm sure stuff like that doesn't necessarily mean that a movie's going to turn out badly. In the article, one of the examples that the writer gives is the fact that in Back to the Future, which is one of my favorite movies, the actor who played the actor who was supposed to play Marty McFly in the beginning, I don't recall his name right now, but he basically had to do something else or decided to leave the production, and they had already shot a lot of the scenes for the movie with him. And so they had to find somebody else and then reshoot a bunch of shit. So that's kind of like, an issue in production, but the movie turned out great. So it doesn't necessarily issues in production don't necessarily translate to a bad movie. But, I think in this case, not that this was a horrible movie or that it was bad, but I think it probably did suffer from some of those hiccups along the way. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Movies can really do books dirty. I'm just gonna throw out there Maze Runner. Oh God, they I don't know if they didn't have the budget to do the CGI, or they didn't I don't know what, but it went off the rails real quick. I watched it anyways because I love the books, and I wanted to see what they were gonna do, because they threw it off the rails so hard that I was like, this isn't even the same story. But yeah, books can be a lot better than movies.
I think there's also just certain books that shouldn't be movies, and I don't think that Hollywood gets that sometimes.
Yeah. Let's see. I liked the way that they incorporated the hallucinations, particularly the part where she was sitting in a rocking chair and rocking back and forth, and it kept showing her looking to a door that was to her left, and the door was going like this because she was on her little rocking chair, and it was showing the scene from earlier in the movie when she was sitting with who she thought was Jane but was actually Catherine or Katie.
Yeah, I pointed that scene out in my notes too. I thought that was neat.
That was really cool, and I liked how when she was when they would show her with her wine and after she just took medication, and they would tilt the cameras all sideways, and I think that they distorted the audio a little bit and stuff. That was cool. And also some of the movies in the background, the old movies that she was watching were I only caught one of them, but I suspect there was more. That they were kind of syncing up with things relevant to the plot, or also foreshadowing. The one that I caught was there was a part where there was it's from some old black and white movie where there was eyeballs, and they were cutting through the eyeballs, and then it got to it stopped that little transition, and then it showed some people talking, and the person was oh, haunted, but I can't see by what. And like that, I think is foreshadowing Anna being in denial about her family's death, and like we don't, as an audience, we don't know why what happened to make her not be a psychologist for kids anymore, and like being stuck in the house and like needing her own psychologist. Like we don't know how she got from point A to point B, but there's obviously something that caused that. So she's being haunted, but by what? We don't know.
Makes you think.
Makes you think.
So, Danielle, what are some of your final thoughts regarding this movie?
Well, I'm glad you asked, pal.
You gotta say something after you say that.
Well, I'm just glad you asked.
Oh, okay. Well, I am too.
I just wanted to quickly mention that the kids in the neighborhood during Halloween are fucking mean. They threw those eggs at her house and they wouldn't stop.
That was like, whoa, what the hell?
Yeah.
They were very rude. For no reason. It's not even like she was mean. I guess maybe she didn't put out candy, but like, that's pretty...
I thought that's what David was implying, is like, hey, you sure you don't want to just put some candy out there? I mean, they still would have probably got mad because somebody would have took the whole thing of candy anyways.
Yeah.
But,
like, you sure you want to put out candy? You're going to get hella harassed.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently she did, so, yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Let's see. I thought that the scene where she's on the phone with 911 and she, like, starts hallucinating, and it goes from, you saw your neighbor stabbed, to, ma'am, did you stab your neighbor?
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, when like all this like stuff happened, and then like she passed out.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those little, I feel like it was a little fake out moment for me where, like I said from the beginning, I was skeptical of of what was reality.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a cool little detail that was like, I'm sure was meant to like fuck with the viewer a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So that was neat.
And then I had one question. I ended up answering it sort of, or I made up an explanation for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking, like, how does Anna have money if she doesn't work? And she's like, you know, must be eating and like paying people to bring her food. And also she has a therapist and they're not cheap.
Right.
And then I thought, well, maybe she has like savings from when she was a psychologist. And then, or also, once you know that her family's dead, maybe she has like life insurance from her husband or something.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, you don't even know how long it's been since her family died. Yeah. So it's just...
I think at some point somebody mentions like 3 years.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I feel like I heard that somewhere in there. It might have been the therapist. It might have been somebody else. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
And then the last thing that I wanted to mention was that I thought when, like, at some point, I think, just from when they introduced, Ethan and then fake Jane, aka Katie,
mm-hmm.
I thought that this was all going to be a setup, by Anna's therapist to get her to go outside, like that if everything was being played out to like get her interested in something and to make her go outside, which I thought was like, oh, she actually went outside to try and go save Jane. And just the way that, like I was saying, the way that Ethan and Katie were introduced was, they were both introduced very, like, nosy, like, as if they were, like, I don't know, like, detectives or, like, therapists trying to, like, get in her head.
Yeah.
They were very, very, like, prying and nosy, and, like, how, like, I wrote how a shrink would act or something, which I was like, this is weird. This is really weird.
Yeah, the interactions were weird. It made me think that there was an element to it that Anna was imagining or making up. Like, I thought maybe these people aren't real. that was something that crossed my mind when they introduced Ethan and Jane/Katie.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, maybe these are like not real people. But then obviously that's not really where the story goes. But I think there's something a little weird about the way that she interacts with them.
Yeah.
Especially Ethan, I feel like, because it was kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah, did she just let him in after,
Yeah.
I guess because he was a child?
Yeah,
so
I guess.
she,
Mm-hmm.
felt like she could let her guard down?
She was comfortable, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was, going back to the agoraphobia, there wasn't really any resolution to that either.
Yeah, it's like, I guess she just got over it.
Yeah.
Because she was in the hospital and she had to, get out of the hospital to go to her house.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe being outside, I don't know. Or, because she dealt with the trauma and, experienced, a near-death experience.
She had brand new trauma to focus on.
Yeah.
She said agoraphobia, who?
So, Paula, what do you rate this movie?
So, I rated this movie 7 out of 10 plot twists. Just because of the things that I already said. I think it had a lot of potential and a lot of opportunities for it to have gone down a path that just made more sense.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the movie, I was like, I enjoyed that. And face value, as soon as we were done watching the movie, I turned over to Danielle and I was like, that was good, that was interesting,
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I really thought about it and I
Mm-hmm.
kind of dissected it in the way that we have been doing for these podcasts that I realized that there was something off about it for me. So I still think that it's worth a watch. It seems like the kind of movie that you just throw on and watch if you have some time to kill, or maybe if you're a group of friends like scary movies.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely I think it would definitely benefit from a viewing like that that doesn't have any sort of really high expectations for a masterpiece of a movie, because I don't think it's really that. I think probably at one point I would go as far as saying that it was potentially, at some point in its conception, Oscar bait, because it had Amy Adams in it, which means they probably at some point thought before they made it that it could be a movie that could win an Oscar and could potentially be the movie of the year or something like that. I see traces of that in it, and obviously Amy Adams has either been nominated or won an Oscar. I'm not 100%, but she is one of those actresses that's super recognized and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see that in the movie, but it totally didn't end up being that, in my opinion. So
yeah,
7 out of 10. Not, it's a C. It's a passing grade. It's not horrible. It's not great. It's just kind of middle of the road.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? What did you rate it?
Thanks for asking. I gave it a 7.6 out of 10 assumptions. A lot of things that you said, I agree with. That, I had originally given it a higher rating, but once I thought more about it, there were things that warranted a lower rating. I think that it had good acting and a good premise, but the ending was off, and the originality for some of the things, like I mentioned earlier, if it had been something complete, I guess it's really hard to do things that are completely undone, do things that have not been done before. It's kind of hard at this point, but yeah. Oh, and then also I just want to mention that Gary Oldman was in this movie, and I really like Gary Oldman, and he did a good job.
Yeah, he's a good bad guy.
Yeah, he's a good bad guy. But also, I took one of his scenes under a new lens that he was trying to protect his son because he knew his son
Was a killer, yeah.
was a killer, and that he was like, just stop talking to my son, please leave him out of this.
Yeah.
And like in a way he might have been trying to protect her even.
Right, that's true.
So
That's a good point.
yeah, just the like the pleading likeness of his voice.
Mm-hmm.
But also he fucking just bitch slapped the shit out of Ethan.
Yeah.
So,
well, he's also a serial killer, so
yeah. So
maybe that's the lesson to be taken from this movie is just slap serial killers before they kill you. Yeah.
So
Pretty much. So that's pretty much it for today's episode. We hope that you guys enjoyed it, and we hope that you join us for our next podcast/video. So if you're listening to this on just the audio format, please leave us a rating on the Apple Podcast app because it really helps out. And if you're watching on YouTube, then go ahead and subscribe, of course, and give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this podcast. And we will see you next time.
bye.
Bye.